Sit ye back, and I shall a tale unfurl the likes of which... This video is kind of a rerun, sort of, but not really, because it wasn't on this channel. I had a YouTube channel about 8 or 9 years ago, my first YouTube channel. Not very successful, and it was whatever. Anyways, the point is, I had a video talking about DMT, about ayahuasca. If you don't know what they are, I assume you know kind of what they are because you clicked on this, but they are basically two psychedelics. I'll go into more detail about how they're connected, but there are two forms of psychedelic that is very powerful, and I think it was originally from Central and South America. But the point is that I did a video about it. The reason I got rid of that video and that channel altogether was I was working at a high school at one point, and I had another video about how to remove earwax, and one day a student, and I had like 126 subscribers. I didn't think anyone would just randomly find it. I didn't have my real name as the title of the channel like now, so it was a little different. I didn't feel like it would be easy to find. But one day a student comes in and says, "Do you have a video about how to remove earwax?" And I said, "Excuse me," and I left the school and I went home, and I took like a 2-hour lunch. I went home, I deleted my channel, and I came back and I told her, no, I did not. But the point is, I did talk about the reason I decided to eliminate the channel, and I wouldn't be embarrassed about it. Like, I don't care about it now, but at the time I was working at a school. I felt like I had to, maintain some kind of professional image or something. Now that I'm not working at school, I don't care, so let's talk about it. So a lot of people have heard about DMT and ayahuasca now. They've become way more popular. A lot of people like Joe Rogan and Tim Ferriss have talked about it ad nauseum. That's kind of a little joke because there's vomiting usually involved with ayahuasca. But at the time when I first heard of it, nobody I knew about it. I first heard about it in the mid-90s, came across it through Grant Morrison, and then he kind of led me to Terence McKenna's work. Terence McKenna, I read all his books in the late 90s, and I was like, oh, this sounds amazing. I'm really curious about it. I did not do it, though, for many years, until many years later. Actually, first I did psilocybin mushrooms. Actually, I did Amanita muscaria mushrooms, but the first really successful psychedelic experience that I had was with psilocybin mushrooms. But anyways, the point is, later, around 2005, 2006, I was traveling through, I was crossing through Portland. I visited a friend there, and he had, I'd heard of DMT, I'd heard of ayahuasca, but he had something called 5-methoxy-DMT in a smokable form. It was like a white, like crystalline type structure, and you don't light it like marijuana. You need to have it glass between it, like kind of like crack. So you use either like a crack pipe or some other device so that you don't destroy it with the flame. So anyways, he asked me if I wanted to try it. I said okay, and I tried it, and basically, I remember you inhale it and you hold it in as long as you can, like maybe 20-30 seconds, I don't remember. And then at some point, like when you're holding it in, you breathe it in, I just remember like this kind of like this wave of just like boom, like overpowering, like knocking you just, and you basically just have to lie down and just like ride it out for like, I don't know, 10 or 15 minutes. It's kind of difficult to say how long. If knowing now, I would have like asked him to time it so I could, or like now I'd just record it with my camera. I'd be curious to see like how long it actually affects you. But at the time, I just, I didn't have a smartphone at the time. This was like 2005. So I just remember, this is 15 years ago. So like trying to remember what it's like now, like even like as soon as the next day, it's kind of like fleeting. But I just remember it being different from psilocybin mushrooms, and more powerful in a lot of ways, more powerful. And I mean, it's kind of, I conflate the experience with my other experiences with ayahuasca later on. So it's kind of difficult to say exactly what I experienced. But for now, I'll just say, when I talk more about the experiences in a few minutes, I'll just say that the experience physically, I do remember the lung experience. It was very harsh on the lungs, and yeah, it was very like a 20-minute experience can just immediately change your perspective on a lot of things. And even having done psychedelics, I feel like it was more powerful in a lot of ways. It's hard to say different than that. Maybe I'll talk about mushrooms at some point in another video, but let me just move on with this story. So that was like 2005, 2006. I didn't do it again. I didn't do any DMT related things again until, and again, that was 5-methoxy DMT, which from what I've heard, I've actually never smoked regular DMT. I've done ayahuasca and I've smoked 5-methoxy, but I've never smoked DMT. So I didn't, between that smoking it, the 5-methoxy DMT, and doing ayahuasca in 2009, between that, I did LSD, I think, for the first time about 5 times over a year period. I did LSD, and I also smoked a fair amount of Salvia divinorum. But those are both pretty interesting, but I wouldn't say, I guess LSD is a little more interesting to me than Salvia. I have no interest in doing Salvia again at this point. Because I just, in general, at some point I decided I don't like to smoke, and I just avoid smoking anything because I feel like overall the effect on your health isn't good. Like it can not necessarily be horrible, but for me, I just don't really want to smoke. I like to take care of my health, and I feel like there are so many other ways that you can do drugs or psychedelics specifically that you don't need to smoke. So I would rather just find other ways. So I kind of started looking into ayahuasca a bit more, and at some point in 2009, I'd been living with people before then, but at that point, for several months, I had my own apartment, and I just decided, okay, I'll try and make ayahuasca on my own. I'd read about it, and it didn't seem that difficult to do. Like making LSD, that seems like you need to know a good amount of chemistry. But from what I read about ayahuasca, basically, if you can bake a cake, you can make ayahuasca. It's not rocket science. Basically, it's, you obtain. Well, let me describe what it is a little bit more if you don't know what it is. So, it's 2 plants. That's kind of a key thing, and that's kind of what makes it interesting, because people don't know exactly how the native people of I don't know where, I can't remember even where it started, but how they discovered that these specific 2 plants, and that's the traditional formula for making it, but there's other combinations of plants. But basically one, and again, I'm explaining this not as somebody who claims to be like some expert. I'm just claiming, never taking a chemistry class, that you can make this. It's not that difficult. But basically, there's something called DMT, and supposedly it's found throughout nature in a lot of different plants, a lot of different animals. Supposedly we have it in our own human bodies, that we make it. We have theories about where in the brain it's made, but I think a lot of that is speculation. I don't really know. Fortunately, right now, we're kind of in the midst of a renaissance with drugs and psychedelics, that there's been a lot of, because of people like Tim Ferriss and Joe Rogan, that studies, there's like a plane going overhead. I'm going to keep talking because I think I can talk over this plane. But there's been studies that are kind of taking it forward in therapeutic uses. We're seeing cities like Oakland, Ann Arbor, Santa Cruz, California. They're legalizing natural substances like psilocybin mushrooms and ayahuasca, so that you had been able to do it in the U.S. if you go through certain organizations like Santo Daime, I believe their name is. They're like semi-religious organization where they do it as a group. But what if you don't want to do that? Like, I just kind of, like, I understand that some people, if they've never done psychedelics, They may want to do it like in a traditional setting with a shaman and so on. But you know, I'd done enough psychedelics at that point that I felt like I knew how to handle it on my own, that I didn't feel I needed a shaman, or like I know enough about the science that, like, you know, you have to decide for yourself. But for me, I decided I'll just try this, see what happens. So anyways, you can order the plants online. For all intents and purposes right now, they are legal, and having the plants is not illegal. It's, I guess, if you make it and do it. But you know, if you're in the privacy of your home, the odds of somebody coming to your house with a warrant at the exact moment when you're making it would be pretty amazing. So just don't do something stupid. FYI, if any FBI agents or so on are watching this video, I am not making any drugs right now. I do not make any drugs. I do not have any drugs beyond legal drugs like marijuana, which is legal. So get off my back. Anyways, let's assume for the sake of argument that when I did ayahuasca in 2009, I was living in Antarctica where there are no laws relating to ayahuasca. Anyways, I get them in the mail, the 2 plants. There's websites like arrowwood.org. That's a good website for recipes and ideas that you can, and there's tons of YouTube videos now. The point is, I'm just talking about my personal experience about this and how, as an ignorant person like me, I was able to do it with very little problem. So anyways, I get the 2 plants in the mail. You basically have to put them in water, like distilled water. And again, this is not a recipe, so find a better video if you want a recipe. But you basically put them in water and heat them like a tea for, here's the tricky part, you can't do it fast. You have to do it slow and let it happen for hours and hours. The longer, the better. There's a lot of different recipes. From my experience, if I remember, you need at least like 6 to 8 hours at least to really soak out the substance in the plants. And there's different ways you can obtain the plants. You can get them like ground up. You can get them as root bark and so on. Later, I would do versions of it that had, I tended to not prefer the traditional form. I did more of what is called pharmahuasca, which is where you get analogs which have the same chemical properties, the same. Like one of them will have DMT and one of them will have what's called an MAO inhibitor, which basically stops your stomach, I think, from destroying the DMT and allowing it to get to the brain. So that's why you need those 2 plants. So anyways, the first time I made it though was the traditional formula, and after brewing it for like, I don't know how many hours, like 10 hours or something, it's a slow process. It's very tedious, so like you got to have something else to do, but you also got to kind of check on it periodically, make sure it doesn't like burn down to evaporate or it'll just destroy the DMT. And then when you kind of get it to the level of where it's like pretty heavily brewed, you have to like squeeze it through, I think you use like a cheesecloth. It's been years though since I've made it. So anyways, after you've done all that brewing, you have to add like, I don't know if you have to, but I would always add like an acid, like citric acid or lemon juice or vinegar. Anyways, I think it helps in some way. Again, I know I sound like I don't know what I'm talking about. If I was going to do it again, I would research it a lot better. That's the point, is that like with 5 minutes of research, I could figure out the details again. And if you wanted to do it, you could do it. But hold that thought, Chief, before we finish this video, because you may not want to. So anyways, you want to boil it down to as little as possible so that when you drink it, you have to drink as little as possible, because it tastes horrible. And you know, you can add things. I would add like stevia, however you call that, to it, and that seemed to it didn't affect the quality. It would still work, and it would make it taste, you know, slightly better, but it would still taste pretty horrible, because I guess I would compare it to like really musty, dank, like fungi infested coffee grounds with like some bitter lemon juice and like just a pound of dirt thrown in. Just imagine drinking that, and you just drink a shot of it if you boil it down right and get it to a small amount. You just drink a shot, and it's still pretty horrible. You just want to get it past your tongue and down into your stomach as quickly as possible, but not too fast that it ruins your stomach and surprises it that you throw it up. You want to hold on to it and not throw it up, because the longer you can hold on to it, the better your trip will be. So at least you want to at least hold on to it for an hour if you can. And there are breathing techniques, learning to just like Andrew Weil has a good breathing program, and Mantak Chia, that author, has a lot of good techniques for circulating your energy and just like keeping it so that you don't burp. Don't burp. You can swallow, but if you burp, then the taste will come up and it'll just be, you'll throw up, and that is what you don't want. So the longer you can hold on to it, the better. And you may start to feel effects even before you throw it up, and that is usually a good thing, because once I think I held on to it for like 2 hours, and that was amazing. I don't know how I did that, but when it did finally throw up, I was already like tripping a little, so that like I was like, oh, I'm throwing up, but I was like already out of it a little, that it didn't really matter. It's just like, oh, I'm throwing up. And if you can get past throwing up, and if you absorbed enough of it into your body, it's worth it, because you start to enter just like this amazing experience, and it lasts a lot longer. It can be like 2 to 4 or even 6 hours, depending on how much you like. Traditionally, I think when you do it with a shaman, they have like enough, like a big vat that you drink, like maybe you'll throw up and you'll drink a little more. It's just like you get as much of it into your system to guarantee that you get that effect. But on your own, or if you're doing it at home, maybe you have people there with you to help you, to guide you, that aren't doing it. That'd be like maybe the best way to do it, but you want to be able to hold on to it as long as possible. But once you get past that vomiting, and the vomiting, if you don't like vomiting, it's not pleasant. So you have to fast beforehand. So like you're not throwing up food, but you're just kind of vomiting out this kind of like dusty, grainy root bark or whatever you made it with, and it's like very watery and gross, but like and it feels like your entire throat's on fire, like with like little pieces of it's just unpleasant, the taste. So like once you do throw it up though, have a bag ready, have everything's ready. But also once you throw it up, like have either mouthwash or like toothbrush and toothpaste ready, so that you can brush your teeth or basically get that taste out of your mouth as soon as possible. And then once you get it out of your system, just go back, lie down, and hopefully it'll work well, and you'll have a wonderful trip. I've never had a bad trip with ayahuasca, or I don't think, maybe I've had slightly negative trips with smoking 5-methoxy DMT, because I ended up smoking that about maybe 5 or 6 times total, probably less than 10 times, and never a bad trip. But I did have, I would say, like slightly negative trips, where I just felt like kind of lost and like out of it a little. But with ayahuasca, that never happened. Even the more powerful it was, it just felt like. So I guess now I can start talking about the experience itself. So, and again, I'm going to confuse it with the 5-methoxy DMT experience, because I didn't find them too different. They are different, but I don't see as huge a difference as some people see. But some people describe like seeing creatures like machine elves. I think Terence McKenna would describe them as machine elves, or like kind of gnomish or elvish creatures that would communicate with visual language. That was never my experience. I would always, I guess, light was the experience, like the metaphor that I would use to describe it. Like you kind of become light, and it's just this pure light going through your entire body. And I'd done Tai Chi before then, and I kind of learned to feel this kind of like chi energy, and it was similar to that when the full effect of ayahuasca or 5-methoxy DMT was really going through your body. It was like electricity, like pure electricity in your body. It was just like, and it was amazing. But there are many times that you're just completely out of your body altogether. And I kind of described it, the way that I would think about it was that, like, you kind of feel like you're going from being one cell in a body of an organism, like the organism of the universe, to the mind of the universe itself. You know, I'm very from the background of like perennial philosophy and Ken Wilber, that kind of thing. So that's kind of like my take on it. Like, I've kind of like a Buddhist-y background, but you know, like, I'm not really, it's just all language. So like the experience itself though is, yeah, moving into this larger mind that is, you know, you hear terms like infinite intelligence and infinite creativity and things like that, and you definitely have the feeling that there is a mind in the universe that is as far beyond the human mind as the mind of an individual cell in the body is beyond. Like, your mind is beyond a cell in your body. So it's really incredible. It's I've heard people also say that it can, like, this is one of the reasons it's being researched for, you know, depression, anxiety, bipolar disorder, post-traumatic stress disorder with psilocybin too, but with like soldiers and things like that. So this is it does seem to have some therapeutic effect, and I can attest. I mean, it's hard to say because I've done other psychedelics, and you know, you can't really say what you would be like if you hadn't done something. You just are the way you are. But I feel like that once I did it, it did give me some kind of a different, like, some chemical change did permanently happen in my mind that, and I was in like 1999, I was in a pretty bad car accident at Yosemite where I was with other people, and we went off the side of the mountain coming down from Glacier Point, and we flipped and landed upside down, and like, that was definitely the most probably the most traumatic experience of my life, in which you know, I thought I was going to die, and if I had PTSD, I think it would definitely be from that. So I don't know. I think the whole experience of ayahuasca has been beneficial. I can't really say how I'd be different though, obviously. It's interesting to see all the changes in legality that is taking place within the drug community, with marijuana now legal and probably going to be legal more after this election in a few days. I don't know how many states have it on the ballot this year, but it's incredible that, like, certain cities now have, I think, Oakland, Santa Cruz, and Ann Arbor, and I wouldn't be surprised if the next things to be legalized are, I think I've heard in Colorado, like, psilocybin's heading in that direction. So I wouldn't be surprised if at some point down the line you're able to go either to like a clinic or something and do this. That might be the best way. If you are doing this for the first time, here's my recommendations, and feel free to ignore them as you like. But here's what I would say. First, I don't recommend smoking because I did find it very harsh. But if you like smoking and you want, also, it comes on a lot faster when you smoke. When you drink it as ayahuasca, it takes, you know, like any psychedelic consumed through the stomach takes at least 20-30 minutes, and sometimes up to a few hours before usually 2 hours to get to like the max effect. So in that sense, it's kind of better because you can kind of, you know, prepare and feel each stage coming on. And if you have a sitter, you know, somebody there accompanying you, can give you advice and reassure you, play music, whatever, then that is good because you can just see, like, this is the next stage. Okay, I'm just generally. Whereas if you smoke it, it's just like boom, and like you're out of it. So it may be a little overwhelming. I would recommend, if you do this, maybe to start with another. My recommendation for psychedelics, if you've never done them, is to start with marijuana first and do that, like learn to get pretty stoned. And because that you can do at very gradual levels. You can just get lightly stoned and you can get more and more stoned. And if you do edibles, you can do a lot of those. Those are definitely psychedelic. So get the hang of things with that. And then understand, though, if you don't like marijuana, that there are different, all psychedelics have different properties, different characters. They are like people, that they have different personalities. So if you don't like one, it doesn't mean you're not going to like the others. But I would say start with marijuana if you're cool with that. Then maybe try like light doses of psilocybin. Psilocybin is another good in terms of like being able to have moderate doses. You can do very small doses. Microdosing is very popular nowadays. So I would start with that. And then once you kind of get the gist of it, then maybe you're ready for a heavy psilocybin trip, or a heavy, a full ayahuasca experience, and see how that goes. You can go down to Central or South America and do with a shaman and with organizations and so on, but you don't have to. And if you just, prepare yourself, get help, don't do it alone for the first time. Preferably do it with someone who's done psychedelics, and just read as much as you can about it. Read a lot, check out Wikipedia, but also go and check out arrowwood.org. They have a lot of trip experiences, recipes, different ways of making it. I recommend Pharmawaska. If I remember correctly, my preferred method, the easiest way to do it, well, no, I don't know if it's the easiest, but the formula, the ingredients that I used was Mimosa hostilis and Paganum harmala. Those two combined were, one, they're pretty inexpensive, pretty easy to get online, or at least they were. I don't know. The thing is, these things are always kind of changing I don't know why they change, if law enforcement is cracking down on them or what, but for whatever reason, some things are always going to be more or less available, and just read about it and do your research. That's my advice. And then if you are okay with it, go ahead and do it with a sitter preferably, and have a good, safe experience. And don't blame me if you don't like it, because I'm just somebody describing my experience, and your experience may not be the same. But be safe, have fun, and do it in Antarctica where it's legal, or somewhere where they don't care about it.